أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا مولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله. In the name of Allah, the gracious, the merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the universe, the Master of the Day of Judgment. I bear witness and testimony to the oneness of Allah, to His magnificence, His omnipotence, His might, His glory, to His being the creator and sustainer of all things, the giver of life, the guider of hearts, the Master of the Day of Judgment. And I bear witness to the fact that Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam is the servant and final messenger. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him and upon all those who choose to tread in his path until the last day. It is said that the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, when he found himself within this month of Rajab that we find ourselves in, that he would make dua, Allahumma barik lana fi Rajab, that, oh Allah, make blessed for us this month of Rajab. And then he would add on to it the coming month of sha'ban, wa sha'ban. And then he would reference this in relation to the month of Ramadan, وَبَلِغْنَا Ramadan, and allow for us to reach the month of Ramadan. And may Allah make us all from amongst those who reach, witness, and benefit from the blessed month of Ramadan. Many of us have likely heard this dua in various settings, or can understand also so much that we can extrapolate from it. That in these days you start to prep for those days, and you do so in a way where even if you are going to be fasting for the first time in your life as a Muslim, or you have fasted many months of Ramadan throughout the life that you were blessed to have Iman for more than just one calendar year, that there's always an opportunity for us to have growth, especially within ritual that Allah has given to us that has regularity to it. The fundamental understanding of this month is attached to two different things: Quran and Sawm, the revelation of Allah Azza wa Jal, as well as the act of fasting. And for us to understand where the basis of this comes in terms of fasting is a farq. You have a verse in the Quran that addresses this. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. That, O you who have Iman, fasting has been written for you as it was for those that came before you, so that perhaps you might attain taqwa. This verse, just like the dua that we talked about in the first sentence of this khutbah, is also quite often mentioned in reference to a variety of things. But for the purposes of our conversation today, the part that I'd like for us to think about in the onset is where Allah addresses us as people of faith, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. That embedded within that, He is reaching out to you as an individual, saying that this is an act that is rooted fundamentally in Iman. It's an act of faith. That this thing of fasting, that is a ritual, a spiritual exercise, a practice, it has both within it elements of things you do and things you abstain from doing. That it is in its essence an act of faith. And that's what you want to frame it for yourself in these days as you prep for those days. The idea of faith and Iman in Allah is rooted in the foundational relationship that all of creation has, whether they are aware of it or not, as being an abd of Allah individually. That you are an abd because you rely on something for your existence. This is a definition of being an abd. You are not self-sufficient. You need things to exist. Allah uniquely is Rabb because He is Ghani. He is free of need. He is self-sufficient. But the idea of now engaging in ibadah of our Rabb is not meant to be in a prism where you believe in a God that's an angry old man in the sky. But Islam, submission, subservience to that God is not just a surrender, it's a loving surrender. It's a surrender that's rooted in an understanding that this is not just a God that watches me, but watches over me. A God that my Prophet teaches me has more mercy towards me than a mother does towards its child. Why is this relevant? Because in these days when you prep for Ramadan, you understand that it's an act of faith. And determining how you engage in that act, if you have the capacity to fast, there's not a lot of reasons as to why one could justify not fasting when it's understood as an act of faith. The preparation isn't just about how it is that I'm going to read more Quran or engage in night prayers and things to that extent. The preparation is also rooted as we have a blend of those who are professionals and students and anything in between and otherwise. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, that this is an act of faith, that you have a belief in the divine, that He has given it to you for your benefit. So it is not a valid reason to miss that fast just because you have an exam in Ramadan. It is not a justifiable reason to say that I have an interview for a job. It is not a justifiable reason to say that there is an important meeting. The preparation comes within these days, O people of Iman, that you ready yourself to be in a place where you know your Iman will be tested through Ramadan as well. And you start to think from this day, how do I go to that professor? How do I go to that employer? How do I go to those people and give them an understanding that as important as this thing is in front of me, it is not more important than my Iman. And what I put into it is going to yield me what I get out of it. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, the verse starts. O people of Iman, it's an act of faith. The notion is not to engage in a contemplation that is actually self-deprecation at its base. This is a tool of shaitan. May Allah protect us from his waswasa. The idea is also not to go and police others in their engagement, but the assumption is that we don't know necessarily why someone else might do what it is that they are doing. But for me, fundamentally, I can understand right now. I have a semester that started a week ago. I'm in a place where I know that there are things that are going to come up on my job routine. I know things are going to happen 2 months from now. How do I understand my decision and my choices in relation to what it is that the dunya is telling me to rely upon versus what Allah is telling me to rely upon? So the idea isn't that I will be better prepared to take that test, because then you're missing out on the opportunity and failing the bigger test. The idea isn't that I will have more success within that interview. Allah is the one that provides you your risk in the first place. The idea isn't that this is something that is going to give me more strength. The entire notion of the fast being rooted in an element of Iman is then that is what yields you the taqwa. It's not about weight regulation, nor is it about socializing and communal experience. At the base of it, it's an individual obligation that is an act of Iman. And you start to think about it in the year that's ahead of me, where our Prophet had companions who we are taught that after Ramadan, they spent half of the year just implementing what they learned, and the other half of the year, they were just getting ready for the next Ramadan. We have everyone please move up. You can come in close. And it'll be that much easier to be able to then deal with those things if the preparation starts from today. If the first time you seek to fast is on the first day of Ramadan and it catches you off guard, it's going to be harder then to get over the physicality of it. You don't want to be in a place where headaches ensue because there is now in the immediate an attempt to wean oneself off of caffeinated beverages or sleep schedules that make no sense. That's not the moment where you start to get your gossiping in check. This is the moment you get your gossiping in check. That's not the moment where you start to say that I'm going to regulate certain habits that I know will problematize. These are the moments you start to get it done. And the end gain is what? If we look for incentivization, you yield taqwa, awareness, consciousness, mindfulness rooted in an ethical imperative and an understanding of a divine entity that watches over you. Because I don't want to be the person that is oblivious to the ideas that my words hurt people. I don't want to be the person who somehow is unaware of the fact that my absence of etiquette still can hurt people's hearts. I don't want to be in a place where I fundamentally am walking just simply as a body in this world, thinking that my sole purpose is the eating of food or the drinking of drink or the engagement of physical intimacy and sleep. But there is a soul that is within me, a ruh that makes me human. And that fundamentally is what is the most important part of who I am. So you guys sit deep, especially in this day of Jumu'ah. May Allah make us from those who are taking from its blessings. And understand that the Quran is telling you straight, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, kutiba alaykumus siyam. That, O people of Iman, fasting was written for you. What does it mean that it's an act of faith and addressed to people who are from the mu'mineen? May Allah make us from amongst them. And as you start to prep then, you start to think about that within the individual, but to the other, you're not now otherizing more by being in a place where you comment on why might somebody else be doing what it is that they do. Your notion of preparation is not rooted now simply in the engagement of things that can be both beneficial but also detrimental, because we have access to more information than anybody has ever had at any time in this world. Can we all move up, please, and come close? You can make room for people that are going to be joining in. If there's any space in front of you, the tape lines are just for us to stand straighter in our prayers. But if there's carpet in front of you, you can just move in as more people come, inshallah. So in the preparation, you have to understand that the goal is to not now look to see why somebody else might be doing it a certain way. And this is very important to be a source of encouragement. In a community as diverse as ours, it's not going to always look the same for every single person. We're not homogenous culturally, racially, ethnically, socioeconomically. You have people that join this Jumu'ah prayer literally trying to aim to get to the last rak'ah because their jobs and professions have them sitting in places where they can only get 5 minutes to come. It's still valid for them. Where you now have choice, though, to be able to understand that if that's not my circumstance, what is it that I'm going to really yield to, and what does it tell me that I'm subservient of? And where and how do I start to learn and understand more about what this is and how it is that I engage within it? By accessing resources that help me to understand and to be in a place where when I am talking to somebody about how their Ramadan should be, then I'm thinking that I have the spiritual maturity to know that there are different opinions on this. If people are distracted by the noise, don't worry, it's just noise. We are blessed to be in a place where we are all praying the Jumu'ah prayer in a secure, safe, comfortable environment. What a ni'mah. We have the blessing of being in a place where voice can be amplified with just a simple apparatus in our hands, subhanAllah. Don't think that it's somebody next to you passing wind. That's not what it is. It's just a sound. Block out the noise. It's just there to be your choice whether it distracts you or not. If you have a piece of information, it doesn't mean that you know how to use that information. And this is imperative because you will see people both within what they actually are, what you perceive them to be. And if someone asks you questions in their preparation of Ramadan, you don't want to be in a place where you tell them that, yes, this is something that is good to do, or it makes sense that you are not fasting on this day for all of these reasons. So if you don't know what it is that you're saying, it doesn't mean that it still doesn't have consequence. One of the greatest scholars of hadith in our tradition's history is a man by the name of Yahya ibn Ma'in. And if you read about hadith and hadith methodology and hadith criticism and anything about hadith, you're going to find this man's name, rahimahullah. He sits in a gathering with people, and a woman comes to ask him a question as her husband has passed away and she is now in her menses, her haid. And she said, there's nobody left to be able to wash my husband's body. I'm the only one. Can I do this when I am menstruating? A state of ritual impurity. And in her head, the connections that she's making, she says that essentially this is a ghusl, a purification bath upon the deceased. If I'm in a state of ritual impurity, does this problematize it? Yahya ibn Ma'in, who knows hadith after hadith after hadith, subhanAllah, he says to this woman that you should go ask this man, a man by the name of Abu Thawr, who was a great Shafi scholar and contemporary of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahimahullah. And so she goes and she asks him and she tells him the circumstance. And as he thinks and he reflects, as somebody who knows the text on a whole, not just an individual verse or narration, but knows it more broadly and how to apply meaning to extrapolate meaning, he says that yes, this would suffice. And he mentions a hadith where when the Prophet ﷺ is in itikaf in the masjid, another practice of Ramadan that we'll talk about in the coming weeks, that he has a masjid in Medina that is literally adjacent to his home in Medina. There would be times when he would lean his head into his house and his wife was in her menstrual cycle, and he would put his head in her lap and she would wash his hair in that way. And Abu Thawr, rahimahullah, he says to this woman that if a living person can have their head washed by another living person, then definitely one who is deceased can also have by a living person who is in the same state of menses. Yahya ibn Ma'in, rahimahullah, the great muhaddith, scholar of hadith, he knows the hadith. But Abu Thawr, who is faqih, knows how to take the meaning from the hadith. Do you see what I'm saying? You don't want to be in a place where in the preparation you actually create now obstacle because you are just seeing from you and not seeing from where the person's coming and why it might be different from them. And as you prep, you start to ask yourself questions about what is it that is unique to me, because there are many who are exempt from the act of fasting, and there are those who have conditions that prevent them from fasting. And if there's not an understanding of text to context, it makes it really hard to have fasting be an act of faith. When I now have to have my act be something that first goes through your prism of validation, and you speak words that confuse me, that I don't understand. And it becomes now a common occurrence that one can take a bit of information and say, doesn't this apply to this circumstance? I'm going to be in a documentary for PBS that's coming out on the Sabbath. And we don't have Sabbath in Islam. When I was on camera, I said, there's no Sabbath in Islam. I don't know why you want to interview me for this. We talked about rest and all kinds of things, and there was a trailer that came out, and a professor who his research is rooted in this concept of Sabbath from within the Abrahamic traditions, Judaism, Christianity. And he emailed me excitedly because he saw me in the trailer, and he said, I've been looking for a Muslim who can tell me what Sabbath is in relation to our understanding in the Judeo-Christian tradition. And I wrote back, it's nice to hear from you, Professor. There's no concept of Sabbath in Islam. And he replied back and he said, but don't you have this verse that says on the day of Jumu'ah, the Friday, that you're supposed to leave behind work and go to the prayer? And I said, yes, and the very next verse says, when it's done, you go back to work. But you can take something and turn it into whatever it is that you want to. And you can see somebody, and it can turn into now something that isn't what it actually is. There are going to be people who are readying themselves for Ramadan. Encourage them to ask people that know. Be in a place where you have access to an abundance of information, but the ability to process that information is going to be something that can be more helpful when there's somebody that's helping you through it and you don't have to make sense of it by yourself. When you are starting now in this days to understand how you ready yourself for those days. The fast in and of itself in our tradition is something that has an entire relationship to the 24-hour experience of a night and day in Ramadan. And it begins from that first night before the start of the first day of fasting. And this is where you want to think about how you bring yourself into it. Because intention is important in this act. From the night prior to the coming day, before that Fajr comes in, you got to make an intention that you are observing that day of fast on the next day. And you want to be in a place where that is something that is done as best as it can, mindfully, consciously, aware. You are not in a place now where my 7-year-old is, where he gets up and he says, Baba, I fasted today from breakfast until lunch. And I said, great, Kareem, he's 7, you're not. You start to bring the inner through the outer. And you bring the mind and the heart into from that first night that this is Ramadan that's ahead of me. And how do you ready for that? In these days, you start bringing intention to whatever it is that you're doing and be a person of consciousness, awareness. The Prophet ﷺ, he says in the hadith, Tasahharu, take sahur. فَإِنَّ فِي السَّحُورِ barakah, that indeed in sahur there's barakah. Even if it's a sip of water, the hadith says. How do you ready yourself for this now? The pre-fast meal that you can have at any point from the night until the Fajr time begins. Not when you wake up for the day, but when that Fajr time comes in, true dawn, up until that time. It is more recommended that you do it closer to the time of Fajr, but you got to do it. And it's an important point to understand, because we have a lot of times conversations that get put out there in terms of created practices and innovation. It is an innovation to believe that your fast is better by purposely foregoing sahur, as if making it harder is something that will make the fast a more proper course. Your Prophet said to have sahur. Anybody who tells you that I'm not going to have sahur because it's harder for me to then fast and that means that it's better, that's a problematic statement. To be in a place where you're able to understand that the way the Quran said to do it and the way the Prophet said to do it is the way to do it. If you struggle to wake up for Fajr, if you struggle to wake up to have your sahur, it's different than saying that this somehow is going to make it a more rigorous process and that will in turn make it a more better process. That's not based in our tradition. 2 months you have to figure out how you're going to wake up before Fajr, or how you will consciously determine in the window of time that it's recommended to explicitly take a meal that is called sahur. And the hadith that tells us even a sip of water means that even a sip of water, but also it means you're not supposed to be starting your day just going with indulgence. And you have to understand this. I sat with a sister a week ago who she is praying her prayers, engaging in tahajjud. She is fasting. She's reading Quran. And she said to me, I don't know what to do. She was worried. I'm not eating as much as I used to. Is there something wrong? And I said, no, you're being nourished through other sources. These days will help you to meet it in the highest celestial state. And you start to get an understanding of who you are. So your sleep routine is not rooted in being in a place where you're awake till the middle of the night for no. Even if the rest of the year is different, this is Ramadan. Don't miss out on it. Go to sleep so that it will give you the ability to wake up for that meal. Even if for nothing else, you don't want to miss the barakah of it. And in the course of the remainder of your day, you start to now brace yourself for what will inevitably be things that are going to come up. If you can fast in these days, and you've been blessed to have the ability to fast, then you should. If you have physical capacity to engage in the act of fasting. And here now is another preparation that can be helpful for us to think about. Everybody cannot fast. You are going to have peers, classmates, friends who have physical wellness conditions that are not just the elders of the community. Individuals who have to take medications during the course of their day. Individuals who have emotional wellness conditions that are very real. You have a lot of Muslims who this overt emphasis on the practice of fasting alone in Ramadan as the sole means through which one can gain blessing and proximity to the divine enhances now and enables deeper challenges with eating disorders, body image issues. And everybody is meant to gain from Ramadan. So be smart about how it is that you talk to people. And be in a place where compassion, care, gentleness is rooted in the gatherings that you identify. Have sahur in the morning, but invite others who you know, even if they're not fasting, they'll have the barakah of the gathering with you. Go to your local communities and talk in these months about the importance of recognizing sickness is an exemption from fasting in our tradition. Illness, conditions of different kinds are there. And they're not just physical, but they can exist in any facet. You think about how you're going to make Ramadan an experience for somebody who once had the capacity to fast and they no longer can. You think about what the experience will be for the woman who is nursing and pregnant and she has the option to fast but isn't necessarily going to do it because of the severe impact it's having on her. What's your Ramadan plan and strategy going to be for those people? And here now, as we ready ourselves for opportunities to build as a community, you understand it's an individual obligation. But how you observe the individual obligation impacts the rest of us, because you at the most heightened level of consciousness, awareness, iman, ihsan, allows for us to then yield the most from you individually. Don't start thinking about Ramadan from the last nights of Sha'ban. Don't be in a place also where you are limiting someone else's experience by assessing why they're doing something in a way that it shouldn't be done in that way. We grow together as a community. We play a role in the advancement of our spiritual excellence as a community. I say it to you with love as a brother who cares about you. Don't give up a day of fasting for a pointless reason that's just about the acquisition of the dunya. Don't encourage people to engage in that as well, as best as you can. But then if you see somebody in that blessed month and they're eating, don't jump to hammer them down, but be in a place where you understand the best of your brothers and sisters, not the worst of them. I don't want this to be a space where somebody who is not able to fast feels like they have to hide that. I don't want people to come to our community and feel like they have to pretend as if the mercy from the exemptions of the divine are things that they have to be embarrassed of because of how people will look at them due to their own individual journey to Allah. And so you be the reason as to why if somebody only comes in Ramadan, that it's not the last time they'll come when the month is done. And you start to prep from it from now. It's an act of faith. It's an act of iman. Get ready for it because it's coming. Inshallah ta'ala, Allah Azza wa Jal will bless us in this month of Rajab, bless us in the coming month of Sha'ban, and make us from amongst those who reach the blessed month of Ramadan. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله تعالى فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا مولانا محمدا عبده ورسول. Alhamdulillah, we're blessed as a community to have all of our students return back to this campus in this past week. Make special dua for them, that Allah blesses them and puts barakah in their studies and efforts, protects them from any difficulties and tests towards their iman while they are here, and makes them from amongst the most righteous of His servants, and helps us to be from the best of their supporters. Where and how we plan for the coming month of Ramadan, we're going to need everybody's help. But don't let it be something that you don't think is applicable to you. We talked last week about shaitan knocking at our chests, and if we let him in and you say that this does not mean something for me, then likely it's where he's getting you at your most vulnerable point. Just be open to the idea. It doesn't mean you have to think you're a bad person. You're beautiful. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. Allah made you in the most beautiful of forms. Somebody who is good can still be better. And you have to approach it with that mindset, rooted in the understanding of the reality that is the akhirah, where we can help one another. That would be the best of things. We're going to have community lunch after. It's an amazing idea after a khutbah on fasting that we're going to feed you a lot of fried chicken and soul food. But stay for it. There's barakah in the gatherings. Meet the people that you are going to be praying this Jumu'ah prayer with regularly, and talk to people that you don't know as well, so that they feel more comfort here in this space and can say that that is my brother, that is my sister, not just a random body that I was standing next to in bowing, kneelings, and prostratings. Inshallah ta'ala, these moments will then bear their presence in other moments where we feel as if we are the only one who is going through what we're going through, but the heart will remember the gathering that said, there's so many people who have my back, and all they remind me of is a God that I know just wants what's best for me. Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi ya ayyuha alladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala sayyidina Muhammad fil awwalin wa fil akhirin. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barik wa sallama ya arhamar rahimin. Allahumma innaka afuwan karimun tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anna. Ya muqallibal qulub thabbit qulubana ala dinik. Allahumma ja'alna min al-mukhlisin. Allahumma ja'alna min al-mukhlisin. Allahumma ja'alna min al-mukhlisin. We begin this supplication in your name, Ya Allah. Beseech you to send your choicest salutations upon your most beloved sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam. We ask that you shower your infinite mercy upon this gathering, granting each and every one who is present here and our loved ones only the best in this world and the best in the next. We ask, Ya Allah, that if all of us are meant to be together only at this time, at this place, whether we are young or old, male or female, regardless of our race, our ethnicity, our social class, our country of origin, our cultural heritage, whether we are Muslim or come from a different walk of life, Ya Rabbi, if our individual hearts are meant to be in the presence of all other hearts that are gathered here, only at this time, at this place, then gather us all together again in the best of places in the world beyond this one. Increase us, Ya Allah, in all that is good. Make us from amongst those who are blessed in this month of Rajab, in the coming month of Sha'ban. And allow for each one of us who is assembled here and our loved ones to reach, witness, and take benefit from that blessed month of Ramadan. Help us, Ya Allah, to get ready for it from this day going forward. Let us not be in a place where any tomorrow that we see between this day and the first day of that blessed month is a day that goes without us thinking how it is that we can meet it in the best of states. Give to us opening upon opening upon opening that will increase us inwardly and outwardly, so that we are from amongst those who leave that blessed month in the best of states possible. Allow for us, Ya Allah, to do so with the healing that we need inwardly. To be able to replace fear and inhibition with courage and fortitude and bravery. To remove jealousy and envy and to replace it with kindness, compassion, and love. To take arrogance out of our heart, Ya Allah, and to replace it with a sound self of sincere self-esteem and confidence. And to be in a place where we remove from within us our focus and reliance upon anything in this world, and replace it only with a desire to increase and a sound base of reliance upon you, Ya Rabbi. Protect us always from hearts that are not humble, tongues that are not wise, and eyes that have forgotten how to cry. Forgive us for our shortcomings and guide and bless us all. رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين وأقم الصلاة.